Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. In this episode, I feature a lady who is really inspiring and tells her candid story of growing up as that little kid that found it really tough at school. Years later, she discovered she had dyslexia. But it certainly didn't stop her, because that became her superpower, and now she travels the world, she hangs out with celebs, and she really is living the life. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's always so lovely to see you, normally somewhere sunny, not in the dreary Scotland.
Thank you. No, really delighted that you asked me. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I know it's always good fun, always good fun. So for people tuning in, obviously, I know who you are, I know your success story, but a lot of people will have no idea. So could you just give a rundown of who you are and what you do?
Yes. So I'm Sarah Drummond, and I'm the managing director and exec producer at a company called LS Productions. I'm also the managing director and exec producer of LS Films, which is our newly formed film department. We are a 50-person production company headquartered in Edinburgh. We've got offices in Manchester and London, and we do global production. So we do roughly about 60 productions a year, and those can fall under different streams, as we call them. So they can be fashion, music video, TV commercials. We service film and TV, and then we also have our own original content. So we're developing and working on multiple feature documentaries. So one with Irvine Welsh just now, another one about the Spy Cop scandal, and we're also following an incredible Venezuelan boxer called Joanna Gomez, with her Olympic dream of qualifying for Paris in 2024. So full on, and so that's what I do at the moment. Not that I'm leaving. No, but that's where I'm at right now. And then my kind of journey started when I was, well, my kind of media journey started when I was kind of 14, I would say. So I'm dyslexic. I didn't know I was dyslexic till I was 20, 21, 22. I was diagnosed. And I grew up in a working class area of Edinburgh called Muirhouse, and went to a school called Craig Royston. And Craigie is notorious in Edinburgh. It's not really, it's definitely not top of the school chart, especially not back in the 80s. But Muirhouse is an incredible community, and my sisters and my dad still live there. My aunties, they're incredible community activists and campaigners, and it's still a huge part of my life. But I did a module in English and media studies, and honestly, I can still remember going home and being like, oh my god, that's like why the beans cans are those colours. Or it was just, honestly, it was like a little light had gone off in my head, because I'd really struggled through school and I obviously didn't know I was dyslexic. And this just module was just like, oh my god, like I love this, I get this, I understand this. And I made a film at that time about racism in my school, and it went on to win like a co-op young people's award. And then I ended up getting a YTS at a place called Pilton Video, which is called Screen Education Edinburgh now. And I'm on the board of Screen Education Edinburgh. And I did a 2-year YTS, which back in the day were your youth training schemes, and they could have been anything like plumbing, joining, joinery, electrician, whatever. And I did I can't remember what it was called, video production. So I did a 2-year YTS in video production, and I've worked ever since.
Wow, I mean, that was a pretty quick whistle-stop tour of your life. Obviously, there's more to it than this, but one of the things that you said I really like, I think is really endearing, not just about you, but just about working class people, as you said that your family still live there. And that's really nice. It's the same as me, like coming from Clydebank.
Yeah.
Like I still live in Clydebank. I've never left, but my family still live here as well. And there's just something really nice about that, isn't it? You always, you sort of have your career and everything, and then you're back to down to earth when you were with your family? Is that what it's like for you?
Yeah, they keep me very grounded, don't worry. So when I'm in all these exotic places, they definitely keep me grounded. But yeah, that, I mean, the community is a huge part of our life. My mum and dad, my mum was a drug and HIV counsellor, and she set up a whole kind of like project, which grew arms and legs kind of through the 90s because there was such a need for it. So she ran a massive, actually still runs to this day. Back then it was called SHADA, which was Support, Help and Advice on Drug Addiction, and it runs still to this day as NEDAC, which is North Edinburgh Drug Advice Centre. And so that was, all through my kind of like primary and high school. My mum was, a huge part of the community. She was one of the first people to bring needle exchange into the UK, and they had so she was kind of one of the pioneers of basically helping addicts, and supporting them and giving them that support that they deserved when they were kind of being pushed aside and shunned by the politicians. So community has always been a massive part of growing up. And my dad, still to this day, is a huge community activist. He's just resurrected the North Edinburgh Festival and I think he had like 6,000 people at it last year. It's going to run again in May. But he's just on all of these kind of committees and boards and supporting people. And, he's 72 and I kind of sometimes wonder where I get my capacity from, and it's definitely from like what my mum was like. She's passed away now, and then definitely what my dad's like, just that really kind of like strong work ethic, and theirs was kind of centered around helping people. So
yeah, that's where you get the caring gene from. I remember visiting my uncle down south, and so obviously anything for anyone tuning in, anything beyond the Scottish borders down south. And my uncle was going around going, oh, well, let's see what flowers Mary's potting today. And it was like totally in his community, very different. He's not an activist, but just very nosy and very lovely. So for you growing up then, so give us an insight, at the moment so sort of put it in context, you're flying around the world. Most of the time I see you generally in Cannes with a rosé in hand, which is always really nice. But the reality is, where you grew up and how you came to be now is so far removed. It's completely different worlds. So just talk me through, you talk about, is it Muirhouse where you're from? Tell us, what was that like? And I know you've got siblings, so talk a little bit about them.
Yeah, so we grew up, me and my two big sisters, in a 2-bedroom kind of masonette flat. So we had we call it a balcony, a balcony. So they basically, these like flats on top, like basically, flats with like a kind of upstairs, downstairs. I don't know how best to describe it, but like a prefab kind of thing. So there was the three of us and my mum and dad, so 5 of us basically in this tiny little 2-bedroomed house. So my sister, we moved when I was 12. My middle sister would have been 15. My oldest sister was 18. So basically my middle sister and my oldest sister had to share a bedroom with, like, the 3 of us basically shared a bedroom until they were 15 and 18. And I've got a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old now, and I can't imagine them sharing a room. Now we get on brilliantly. We're still really, really close. We're still like, yeah, we're really close as siblings. But yeah, that was quite, and it's so funny because my mum and dad are like really socialist and quite kind of like with quite an eclectic sort of hippie-ish upbringing, if you like. And we had loads of people who used to come and stay with us, and people who were up for the festival, or like we had like obviously with my dad's kind of politics and stuff, we had just like all of these people who would just come and turn up and stay at our house. And I was chatting to my dad about it last year, and I was like, where did everyone sleep, Dad? And he was like, I don't know, pal, I don't know. Like, it was just full of people in this like tiny wee house, up these flats. So so grew up there, went to Muirhouse Primary and then Craigroyston High. Like I say, school was not fun. I didn't enjoy it at all. And like I say, I didn't get diagnosed with dyslexia until I was 22. So yeah, I was kind of just keen to get out of school as fast as possible, so ended up leaving when I was 15. But Muirhouse back then, and even now, there is still such a strong community spirit. You know, there was like gala days, and my mum would run. There was a centre called like the it was called MSEC. I'm trying to think what it stood for, but you would go and it'd be like the Friday night disco. So you'd pay 50p, and everybody would be at the Friday night disco, and there was loads of youth clubs and just loads of things going on. And we used to get dragged, probably is the right word, although now it's set us up really well, but we used to get like dragged to all the demos. We used to go up to the Timex demos before school. We'd like jump on a bus to Dundee at like 6 in the morning and shout scab, 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 and then like go into school late. We'd go down to London for like the poll tax demos. And we used to go on these holidays to Skegness, but it wasn't the normal Butlins. It was basically like a kind of slightly run down version, but that's where all the SWP conferences and stuff were. So we'd get like schlepped down to Skegness, and we'd go to these like young politician meetings and stuff and talk about all of these things. So absolutely mad upbringing of just stuff. And I did it's just a really interesting kind of reflection on being a working class kid. And I've always, I've kind of changed my view on it a wee bit, because I did some mentor training with Creative Mentor Network in London. So I mentor different producers at different levels of their career, whether it's kind of new entrants or people trying to kind of just get to that next level. And they did this brilliant training, and part of it talked about a thing called social capital. So what is your social capital? What is your network? Who do you know? Because as we know, it's a who you know industry. And although I did media studies and then I managed to get onto this YTS. I mean, I only got into that because I was working in Shoe full time. I had been a Saturday girl there, and then jacked schooling at 15 and went to work in Shoe full time. Was having the time of my life, going to raves and parties and working in Shoe with all these like brilliant people. And the person who I had made the racism documentary with came in for a pair of Doc Martens, and she said, "Sarah, there's a YTS." I didn't even know like what that was at the time, and she said, "Come down on Monday. It's got your name written all over it." And that's basically how I got the traineeship. But on that social capital, on that mentoring course, they talked about that social capital and what, like if you imagine, so my first proper job was in a post-production facility on reception. I had worked there doing work experience and done little kind of the odd days here and there. And the receptionist, I was doing reception cover for 3 weeks. I ended up staying for 8 years, not on reception, but I kind of like moved up the ranks within that business. But I had loads of social capital because I could talk about the things that had happened in my life. We used to go to things in the festival. We used to see plays. We had, interesting people staying in our house. We had, I had all these things that I could talk about. I was still petrified. I still felt like an imposter. I still felt like I had, that kind of imposter syndrome. I felt uneducated. I felt stupid because I was dyslexic. I still felt all of these things. But in conversations with either clients or people that I was meeting or things that I was kind of learning or the things that I was exposed to, I had a really rich, rich things to delve into. So I often think back now, since doing that training, bloody hell, what about the kids that don't have that? What about the kids that are just not just working class? I don't mean it like that, but just don't have the exposure to that yet, or don't have that social capital. Their network is, their mum or their dad or the person that's caring for them, or they're in a residential care home, or they're, been in Pullman young offender. Do you know what I mean? It's like, how do you get to those kids or young people who have nothing, and and then help them kind of to expose them to this industry? Because on reflection, I had a really rich I had a really rich a palate sounds like a really cheesy thing to say, but I had like I had stuff to delve into, which has been a brilliant reflection recently. I'm like, oh God, was I really working class now? Of course you are. Of course you're still like, my dad as a trained trade unionist was blacklisted for years. We had dry pasta for tea. Egg, chips and beans was like, yes, we've got like some saucy, there's something to dip the chips in. So we were, we didn't have a lot of money for loads of my upbringing. But what we did have was this, like one of my mum's pals was a lawyer, and he taught me how to make chapatis. Do you know what I mean? Like what at a party, so then I was the person that made the chapatis when there was like do you know what I mean? It kind of like it's a totally different exposure to kind of life and people and culture. And my mum and dad had pals that lived in Malta, and everyone thought we were posh. Like once my mum and dad kind of were more established working, my dad was an electrician, and the reality was we got standby flights to Malta. So there's 5 of us. So maybe my dad and me would get the first flight, and then my sister and my mum would come a few days later. And then, so, we'd be sitting at the airport wondering if we were all going to get on this like mega cheap flight to Malta. And then we'd basically like sleep on my mum and dad's pal's floor. But, when you lived in an estate, it was like, oh, they're going on a hot holiday. But the reality was very different.
It's so funny, perceptions, everything. And actually, do you know one of the cool things about it is your sort of case in point, and I always think this, depending on what you want to do, if you want to be a surgeon, yes, you need, of course, I want a surgeon to be qualified in their field. But for other things, in the industry that we're in, actually culture and people and experiences, to me, outweigh the education part, because
Definitely.
you can teach it. You can't teach that grit and determination and sass and hustle and all the things I think you get from being working class. So you've proven that through and through so many times. So I'm sure your family are super proud of you and what you've achieved. And obviously we're friends on Facebook and Insta and all that, and I see your feeds coming through, and I can feel and I feel proud of you because I can see what you do. And so if I feel like that, I can imagine how your family must feel, and you must, I guess, have that pinch yourself moment sometimes where, you were saying, God, I was working class, but there must be certain, I get it in Cannes, for example, you're in the French Riviera, you're on a yacht. I mean, it's obscene. And you think, I always stop and reflect and think, I'm really lucky, actually, very lucky. And I guess you have those moments as well.
Definitely. And I think, especially the growth of LS recently, and us as a team, what's really important is to stop and celebrate and reflect and actually be in the moment, because it's a you're on a hamster wheel. It's a tough industry, and if and we're not just striving to be bigger and better and bolder and to take over the world. We just want to do great things with great people really well, and and we're doing that. And then when that is working really well, you're kind of like, oh God, if I think back to the year that we had last year on it, I'm like, what, and I'm in a business group called Vistage, and we do goals, and you kind of stand up and you say what your goals were. And I was like, yeah, I did that. Yeah, that happened. Oh yeah, that happened. And like everything was just totally smashed and more. And I think if you don't, one, you've got to set those goals. You've got to, set out what you're aiming to do. But also it's dead important to kind of reflect on that and to be in it and actually enjoy it. Because it's not about just moving on to the next thing and, what's the new shiny thing. It's like, God, this is actually really special. And, you've got to kind of take those moments. And my family are definitely really proud of me. And they do keep me grounded. But yeah, they're always like sharing stuff. And it's funny, I had quite a mad week last week or the week before, and I'm just trying to shout because this bloody building noises.
It's always the same, isn't it, when you do these things, that the workers turn up.
They've been putting like steels up, so it's been like steel banging, and now they seem to have like pneumatic drills out. But yeah, in terms of like my family, they are really proud, and those kind of pinch me moments, they we obviously, well, not obviously, but if you look at our work at LS Productions, we're kind of, our sort of unique thing, or what we're sort of known for, is working with high profile talent. So people can see, right, well, you've worked with Harry Styles, or, we've just done 14 music videos for Ed Sheeran for his new album, and like Penelope Cruz and Ben Stiller, and I could name drop for ages of all the the kind of high profile talent that we work with. We did all of Ronaldo's work when he was in Manchester, and for me it's just a job. It's like they're just people, and I think having that outlook kind of, like when we did the first job with Ronaldo, like his people were like, we only want you guys to work on this. We only want to, so I was getting most of the comms coming through, and I was like, yeah, but I've got a team. Like, please let me pass you on. But they just kind of like that sort of normalness, that warmth, that empathy, that fact that you're not starstruck. It's like, we're here to do a job. Let's do it. And obviously there's wee moments that are kind of, I'm like, oh my God, once the NDA's lifted or once things come out. And we always say at LS, especially me and Marie, our CEO, if we're not excited by this, if we're not excited sitting in Netflix in LA, or if we're not excited going to a yacht in Cannes, or we're not excited going to a premiere in London, or, we just got a job confirmed today, and it's like, if we're not excited by that job, it's not a massive job, but it's we're still excited when we get a confirmed job. And like last year we did 62, and if we don't celebrate every time we get a job, then why are we doing it? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's just dead important for us to kind of to celebrate those things. And then I was saying about sorry, I'm like Billy Connolly. I start loads of conversations and then come back to it, and then sometimes I forget. But yeah, last week or the week before was a crazy week, and we ended up at the premiere of Louis Tomlinson from One Direction's new documentary. And then we met Liam Payne from One Direction. We got on really well. We were chatting for ages. There's a couple of projects under LS Films that might be interesting. So we're now having a dialogue. And now on my phone, I've got voice notes from Liam Payne. And he's like, we're chatting. And my kids are dying. They're like, oh my God, Mum, that's Liam Payne from One Direction. I was like, yeah, I know. So they're like absolutely losing their minds, and the only person from One Direction that I've not met is I'm going to forget his name, and that's what the Irish one. Anyway, that's terrible that I can't remember his name. You need to cut that bit out. But my kids are like, you just need to meet that, and then you've met everyone from One Direction. So even they're proud as well of being in that kind of mad world.
Absolutely. The thing is, I think that's a badge of honor. You don't know his name because it shows that you're not starstruck. So he'll have to try harder to get on your radar.
He will. He's really good pals with Lewis Capaldi, and I really want to work with Lewis Capaldi. So maybe Niall Horan, that's it. So maybe a Niall Horan and Lewis Capaldi thing. I'll need to manifest that and make sure we can work with him.
Well, things keep happening for you, so if you manifest it enough, it will happen. And one of the things I want to do, so we're talking about all the success stuff, the great, I mean, this is just wild. It's brilliant to be in LA and Netflix and all these people. But can I just take you back to when you were that child, at the point where you didn't enjoy it in school? So maybe the worst part of your school. Talk me through, what is it like to be a dyslexic child that's not good at school? How take you back to yourself. How do you feel at that moment in time?
You trying to make me cry, Lynn?
No. I just want to understand.
I'm joking. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I put something on Twitter the other week, and someone from school was like, "You were a clever clogs at school, Sarah," or "I always thought that you were really clever," or made this comment that that he didn't kind of pick up on the fact that I was struggling. But I think because I'm quite confident, or like outwardly seem confident, and I had all these kind of other things going on, in terms of kind of like things that were going on in my life. So school just didn't really feel like it was that important. I didn't enjoy it. I just remember being like, don't ask me, please don't ask me, like, don't ask me to answer this, don't ask me to write on the board, please don't ask me like anything to do with like these maths questions. I was in the bottom classes for everything apart from home economics because it was practical. And I ended up getting like a credit for home economics, which is totally random. But that's only because I was tidy and I cleaned up after myself and I did the cooking. So because I was like organized, like really organized, and I had everything planned, so I did well in my home economics practical. But everything else, I think the curriculum's changed, but you get like fives and sixes, which is like foundation level. So that was my bar. But I just felt stupid. I just felt like really stupid, and I've had to really like work on that. Even up until like 5 years ago, and even the successes that I've had in other businesses, like I was saying about Picardy, I started on reception and then I kind of became the facilities assistant, facilities coordinator, facilities manager, and then ended up at the operations manager. And that was over a kind of like 7-8 year period. So, and that when I first sort of started to get like when I always, it's like that, you don't want to sound like a dick, and I've got my LS don't be a dick mug here as well, so a little constant reminder of one of our values, which is don't be a dick. But when I started to excel or do really well, I was like, right, I'm like really smart and I'm like able to do these things that other people are not able to do. Like we had a whole new like library system and whole new scheduling system at Picardy. It's a post-production house, and I mastered it. I was like, yeah, you just do this, just do that, that goes there. So everyone was then asking me, but could I spell? Could I write a phone number down? Could I write when somebody was looking at me? My grammar, my written English was shocking, and I just thought it was because I was uneducated. I just thought it was because I went to a shit school. I was like, oh, I can't do these things because I went to a shit school, because I've not been to uni. I've not been, we did a few modules at college when I did my training, and I didn't really, I think they would be fails apart from like my home economics. Like if you looked at my actual exam results, and then I left when I was 15. So I only went back in I left and then I went back in and did some exams and then was away again. So I think like at that time I was like, there's something I miss here. Like, why can't I do these basic things? Why can't I write a phone number? Why can't my brain and my hand work together? So I went to the doctors, and it was our family doctor. And I was like, I'm doing really well, like in my work, and I've like done all these things already. And I was like 21 or something. So then I was diagnosed basically with dyslexia then, and I was like, right, okay, that's what it is. But you don't get past that stupidness. You don't get past that feeling of feeling stupid, and you definitely don't get past that kind of like sicky feeling in your stomach when you're like, fuck, I can't do this. Like, this is too hard. And even in business now, there's certain things that I'll get, or certain communications, and I'll be like, I can't read that. Like, I actually can't read that. And whether it's like something that's been sent that's maybe like multiple fonts, or loads of stuff's underlined, or it's like, there's like maybe loads of picture, like, or not loads of pictures, it's just too much information, like in a like crammed in. I'm like, I actually can't read that, and I'll have to take like some extra time, or just like pull out the little bit. So there's kind of pros and cons of it, because it also makes a brilliant skim reader. So I'm really good at like skimming things fast and like making fast decisions and empathy and big vision thinking and all those kind of things. So now I believe that it really is like a superpower, but that's taken a lot of work to kind of get over that. I don't think you ever get over those shitty school feelings if you've had a negative experience with school. And I was just like, I just don't want to be here. It's just not for me. And both my kids are dyslexic. And I knew like from, when their B's and D's were back to front when they started to learn to like write their name. And we used to take the mickey out of my dad and say that he couldn't spell bus. So it definitely comes down the genetics, and definitely from my dad. But like for my kids, I had them diagnosed early, pushed the school, made them go to Boost. They hated me for it, but I'm like, take the help, take the extra help. When you're older, you're going to thank me for it. I know it's shit to be taken out of class. I know that it feels like, all of these things, but just get the tools, just get those like little kind of like bits that can help you. And like Daisy's doing incredible in school. She's such a hard worker, and Scarlett's definitely just, she'll coast through. And as long as she can coast through with her confidence intact, that's all I care about. I don't care about, university or, them coming away with a fucking numbered certificate that tells you what you're, or a lettered certificate telling you who you are as a person. I just think the education system's so outdated. It's the stuff that they learn. I'm like, you can use voice notes, you've got spell check, you can use Grammarly, you've got a bloody calculator. You don't need to do any, like, I failed maths at school and I can run a multi-million pound, company and a multi-million pound production budget. When when it's real and it's tangible and you want, there's a reason to do it and you want to do it, then it just makes it so much easier. But God, I could speak for about 8 weeks on my thoughts on the school system.
Oh, do you know what I think as well? It's definitely broken. I mean, if you think about it now, I'll tell you this first. So a member of my family, they're worried about one of the kids because at the moment they can't read. So there's some issue. And I was saying the other day, of course it's a worry. It's always a worry. However, we're getting into the era of AI and everything else.
Yeah.
So actually, no matter what you have that you think is holding you back, there will we'll have it now, or we'll soon have technology that will be able to help you anyway. So actually your life isn't over because you just can't do something. That's why you employ good people, because they can do the things that you can't do. And so that's why we need a real mixed bag. So now, you were saying like now in your career, sometimes you'll get documents that come in and if it's too overwhelming, maybe you can't take it in the same way. So you've obviously got people around you. Are there other kind of hints and tips for that kind of thing? Like, because I mean, I don't know what it would be like having dyslexia. So I think
you've just got to be honest and open. So I've always been, like, I probably mention it every day in the office, or every day on Zoom, or every meetings or whatever. And it's not that it's an excuse, but I just kind of own it now. And there are different ways of kind of like learning and thinking. And I think that openness helps others. So within our business, we've got people who have ADHD. We've got there's people across that neurodiverse spectrum, and their minds are incredible and their capabilities are incredible. So businesses need those kind of skills, and I look into this a lot because I go down like rabbit holes of like learning. But the skills of the future are people who are on that spectrum, because there's certain skills of where you're really detail orientated in terms of maybe like legals and contracts, or there's things that are going to be automated. There's things that are going to just happen that don't need human interaction or humans to be able to kick it off or run with it. But the things that you need are compassion and empathy and that big picture thinking and creativity. And so those are the kind of things that the future employers will be looking for, because you'll have AI who are going to be able to write a report or pull together a marketing strategy. Now, obviously, you need I'm being quite bold or quite blunt, but say in like 10 years' time, you're not going to have somebody to sit in an empty room and start an essay from nothing. It's just not going to, language is going to be created by AI. But it's what you then do with that what you then do with that stuff that's really important. Like, how are you going to then, make it into the real world? I'm not explaining this very well, but what I am saying is that neurodiverse people are the future. It's my bold statement there. And I think within my business, it's just having a safe space. And Marie as well, she's really, we've got a really strong culture. We're a people-led business, and it's just like allowing people to fail, allowing people to make mistakes, understanding that some people need a lot of detail and some people don't want any detail, they just want a few bullet points. So we do a thing at LS called Insights, which you do a kind of colour profile of like whether you're like red, green, yellow or blue. and you get a kind of whole report. So it's kind of like, how do I like to be communicated with? How, what doesn't work for me? So we're kind of working through that of like, well, how do we all work together better? And it's not perfect because we're all human, we're not AI robots yet. So it's just being honest and open and transparent and kind, and just giving people the space to either fail or thrive.
Do you know, I think that's so true, isn't it? It's about being human and honest. So I think the last couple of years, if it's taught us anything, people are seeing through the fakeness. They don't need someone because, you and I will both know lots of people who can talk a really good game, but you're like, do you really know what you say? And even if you do, it doesn't make you the right person, or it doesn't mean that you're going to do better than what I can do. But when people say fancy words, or and we've been through it together, I'm sure you kind of look at them and go, oh my God, they're really smart. And then after a while, as you get older, you're like, you're not really, you just know a few fancy words. So well done on you. And I guess for people that are like tuning into this, I guess you're going to get some CVs in, because you're not just a cool business working with really cool people and brands and doing fun stuff, but you can tell you're really nice people. And I actually think that's inherent of working class people as well, because you accept others for who they are, not what you would want them to be. You'll have aspirations for people, but you just like people for being them. And see, for you then, like for you to get that amount of success, obviously your YTS scheme, and I remember the days, I remember people being on them who have done actually quite well now. Yeah. But, when you go on something like that, and you've obviously built your way up, obviously you had dyslexia, which, at the time you didn't have the same tools way back then. But see, what do you think it is about you and being working class that's sort of giving you that hustle to do really well?
It's funny, I think that two people have said recently, like unprovoked, and they've been in certain conversations, going to name drop, and one of them's Irvin Welsh. Another one's a young lad, well, he's young in my head, he's probably about 40 something now, but anyway, a young guy that I worked with, Stephen Cook, and they both said, you're a grafter. That's because you're a grafter. And I think Irvin had sent a message about something, and he had like asked how I was, and I was like, yeah, I'm brilliant. And he was like, you always are, because you're a grafter. You've just got that, like you say, that grit, that determination, that kind of like that passion and that drive. And I think I've been really lucky to find something that I love and something that I'm really, really passionate about. And I think that's part of what I want, like trying to instill with the kids, like find something you love, because, it's a long, long old life if you don't. But I think it's just that, what I did wasn't to get me out of a scheme. What I did wasn't to get me, a big house. I don't have a big house, or a fancy car or whatever. It wasn't like, well, I want to just buy designer things and live in, Monaco. It was just that I found something that I'm passionate about, something that I love, and actually something that I'm good at, and something that is that I've kind of managed to sort of forge my own path with, if that makes sense. Like, didn't want to go and work in London, managed to have brilliant jobs being based in Scotland, but still able to travel the world. So I think it's just that, like you said, it like grit and like hunger and passion and loads of drive. And it's, my sisters are pure grafters as well, and and so is my dad. Like, my dad does so much still in the community. My sister, like 52, she's gone back, she's just applied to Edinburgh Uni. She's doing like community studies. I'm going to say all that wrong and it's going to be really bad. And my other sister works for a charity empowering young females. So we've all got that in us. We've all got that kind of like that just will to do great stuff. And it just so happens my great stuff is with like A-list celebs, and their great stuff is brilliant stuff in the community and really helping people. But I think for me as well, one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and being on the board of Screen Education Edinburgh, is like, well, where are the opportunities for kids like me? Where are the opportunities? How can we help people to break those barriers and get proper working class people, not even kids, people into the industry. And we're talking a lot with like Screen Scotland and Screen Nets and Beck too, and Screen Education Edinburgh, of like, how can we join up the thinking on that? Where is the, where are the different industry opportunities? How do you then find those people? What's the path that they've got? And even if it's not about and part of the thing at Screen Education Edinburgh, it's not churning out people who are going to do amazing in the industry. It's bringing, it's even just bringing their confidence up a bit, or connecting them with more people, or just getting them out the house and just trying something new. So it's kind of like film can bring that to, you know what I mean? It's a really connective industry. It's a really you need to be a team player to work in this industry, in the creative industries. So it's just a brilliant way of bringing people together. And even if it's not about becoming the CEO of whatever, it's just enough to actually just do it.
Yeah. Would you know what? I mean, I think everyone who's watching this or listening will see how you're successful. It's very obvious to me how you've got to where you are now, because you are actually just a really nice person. And it's, people like you that tell your story like this that will help inspire others, because, this series is not just, as you say, it's not just for the kids, and it isn't actually just for the working class. It's about anyone who's in life who has some adversity, or, and some of my guests we weren't all poor when they were wee. They all had just different stories. So thank you so much for sharing yours. And I think you're just going to help so many people. And yeah, just keep being amazing. And also I was going to say, can I say to you, just don't be a dick.
Yeah, I know. It is, honestly, our values at LS, our values are shit hot, creative at heart, learning always, don't be a dick, and people. And those five values are, we kind of, not even in a business sense, but just in life, those are values, like, strive to be shit hot. You can be creative even if you're an accountant. It doesn't mean that you're painting a picture or whatever. And learning is so important. Like, if you're not learning, you're dead, basically. It's dead important to make sure that you learn every day. That's the only way that you can kind of can grow. And then the don't be a dick one is my favourite.
It's my favourite.
It's really important.
It is.
Yeah,
well,
we've got loads. I was just going to say, we've got loads of posters all over the office with it on, just as a reminder.
Yeah, just so that you don't forget. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And I'll catch up with you
thanks
soon.
for having me.
Not at all.
Brilliant.
See you in Cannes.
Yeah. Thanks, Lynn. Cheers. Bye-bye.